actors of all time. In fact, when it comes to box office draw, he's number five.
Wow.
Like $4.5 billion people have seen his movies. It's quite amazing. Anyway, I think like a lot of us, he's on a spiritual search, kind of trying to figure things out. So there's been a series that's now been going a few years, and Morgan Freeman is the host. He goes to various places, including Canada, actually. He's been in France and all over the place. And some of the things that have really inspired him is the Apostle Paul. And if you're not familiar with the story in the book of Acts, he's on his way to Damascus persecuting Christians, and he has this vision of Jesus. So that was one of the stories that really impressed Morgan Freeman. And then also a guy named Charles Mully down in Kenya, of course, a friend of this ministry.
Yeah, so season 3 is going to feature Charles Mully in one of their episodes. And Charles Mully is a man who was a street child, who ended up becoming a businessman. He was very, very wealthy, and God spoke to him to give it all up to help orphans, and he's been doing that for many years. We've partnered with him here at 100 Huntley Street Crossroads for more than a decade, doing all kinds of projects to help those orphans, including fish farms and chicken farms and vocational training and building places for kids to sleep. And it's been insane. We still work with him today. So such an inspirational man. What he has done to change the world, and he says it brings him so much joy. It's not like this big sacrifice. He says it's the most joyful thing he's ever done.
And I think a guy like Morgan Freeman, kind of from a secular perspective, trying to figure out, why does this guy do that? But it's because of his relationship with God. And I think it's great that it's getting out on the airways and people are hearing about Charles Mully that maybe don't know about him. Just an amazing guy. Now, speaking of the story of God, you and I, Maggie, our team, and then 95 of our new closest friends.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, guys. We love you all. Miss you. So we were in the Holy Land, and we took Greg, the quirky cameraman, to the Dead Sea. Let's find out what Greg found out.
Oh, hey kids, is anyone thirsty? Oh, I sure know I am. Walking 4.5 miles, it's 41.5 degrees outside. I see a body of water in the distance. Guess what? It's the Dead Sea. Isn't that amazing? I can't even drink it. It's salty. That's so great. And that got a mind like me thinking about adversity, challenges. How do you deal with situations in life where you think they're going to go one way and then they go a completely different way? Let's find out.
Good friends, really supporting you, and yeah, always try to be positive. I think if you have a positive thinking, then things get smooth all the way.
I guess I'm fluent, like the river. That's simple. If it doesn't go in like my plan, I will try to make it better where it goes. That's it.
Having the right people around you and having their support, and maybe if they tell you something, maybe listen once in a while. Try to keep on moving on. I think that's the most important thing. And keep on dreaming. Think that everything happens for a reason in life.
It might be stressful, but it's also good. I try to flow with the change, and I try to welcome the change. I don't try to push it.
See, he was floating in the Dead Sea.
Love that music.
Oh, he's such a, we just had such a blast, and looking forward to the Easter specials coming up next week. And I like what one of the ladies there said, just kind of flow with it. That's not been my history, Cheryl, but I'm trying.
Type A, it's hard to do that. Well, we have so much more in today's program. If you know someone who has been diagnosed with ovarian cancer or any kind of cancer, you're going to want to hear from our guest in just a few moments. Give them a call, get them to watch. There is hope. Andrea shares about her miraculous cancer journey.
Looking forward to that. And Bible commentator Danielle Strickland shares about the beauty placed in every single one of us.
All of us?
All of us.
All of us.
Yeah.
It all starts right now.
I received a package in the mail from the Cross Cancer Institute that had all of these brochures and all this mail-out stuff about how to cope with ovarian and uterine cancer. That's kind of how I found out.
Thank you for calling Crossroads 24-hour prayer line. Currently, all of our prayer partners are busy. If you would like to leave a message.
Last year, people suffering from paralyzing life circumstances like loneliness, illness, depression, and death called our prayer lines over 500,000 times, looking for hope. But as hard as our prayer partners try to respond to every call, still 1 in 4 go unanswered. Why? simply because we don't have the technology we need to keep up with the growing demand for spiritual help. But together, we can improve that. Project HopeSpring is our solution to get the technology we need to answer more calls. Our goal is to raise $100,000 over the next 2 months to make this vision a reality.
Thank you for calling Crossroads 24-hour prayer line. How can I pray for you today?
I need help.
Just imagine the difference you could make in someone's life by your will to give. Support spiritual care in Canada. Donate to Project HopeSpring today. And as our special thanks for your support, we'd like to send you one of 3 inspirational art pieces for suggested minimum gift. Quantities are limited. Call 1-800-265-3100 or donate online at crossroads.ca/hopespring.
When you support our work here at Crossroads 100 Huntley Street, you are joining us in sharing God's love with many who may never know about His peace and His grace. For a suggested minimum gift, we would love to send you this beautiful Amazing Grace plaque. With your help, we can continue to share God's amazing grace with those in need by equipping our prayer center with updated technology. Call us with your gift, 1-800-265-3100, or go online at crossroads.ca/hopespring.
Cancer is one of the scariest words in the English language. If you haven't experienced it, you likely know someone who has. My guest today not only survived it, she has a miraculous story to tell. Annie, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So tell me how this started. You started having some pain and you didn't know what was happening.
Yeah, exactly. I was having pain, like in my stomach, and severe enough that I was having shooting pains going down my leg. I was having trouble standing upright, and it came on quite quickly. But before that, I was having a lot of issues with my stomach just looking distended. So when the pain set in, I knew that there was something going on, basically.
And your roommate was teasing you about being pregnant. I mean, you were like not a little distended. Like you were trying to do sit-ups, like everything.
Yeah, exactly. I was exercising. I was doing all these things. My roommate would come over and poke at my tummy and be like, "You look pregnant." So
nice roommate.
Yeah, really.
Oh my goodness. So nothing was helping though.
Nothing was helping. You know, I mean, as far as exercise goes, I was seeing results in other areas, but my stomach was not. It was actually getting bigger.
So you ended up in this incredible pain in the hospital. And I know it was really rough. Tell me what happened.
Yeah, so, you know, I was in and out of the hospital, basically just begging them to do something because I was, just in so much agony. And at the hospital, they ran a number of tests. They did different scans, and they were even just poking and just like prodding at my stomach. And yeah, they confirmed that there were 3 large masses in my lower abdominal, that there was one on each ovary and then one on my uterus as well. Each of them were 9 to 11 centimeters.
So they could actually feel them as they were examining you even.
Yeah, exactly. Like I was laying out on the stretcher and they were poking my tummy, and you know, they were doing this and like measuring. You could see they were measuring just with their fingers. They could feel the masses.
Wow. So you're diagnosed with these masses, but they don't actually tell you it's cancer. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so that was kind of bizarre, to say the least. The hospital was adamant that they did not want to do the surgery right away because they specifically wanted oncology to do the surgery. But then they kind of tried to downplay that, and they said, oh, well, you know, oncology is just because they're, you know, more specialized with masses. And it wasn't until I received a package in the mail from the Cross Cancer Institute that had all of these brochures and all this mail-out stuff about how to cope with ovarian and uterine cancer, and that's kind of how I found out.
Oh my goodness. And the surgery that they wanted to do was fairly serious, right?
Yeah, Yeah, so that was one of the things, is that they wanted to do an exploratory surgery, so with, you know, a long incision as opposed to laparoscopic. Yeah, so they specifically wanted to do an exploratory surgery because they wanted to make sure that they got all of the cancer, and at that point, finally, the surgeon confirmed that yes, it was cancer. You wouldn't be at the Cross Cancer Institute if we thought you had anything besides cancer. So yeah, they wanted to do an exploratory surgery, which would have likely involved a hysterectomy, possibly removing part of my colon, and just what they call staging, which is, you know, removing any tissue or any parts of organs that may have been affected by the cancer and where the cancer may have spread.
So you just didn't know what was going to happen.
Exactly, and that's what was really kind of scary, was that they told me they wouldn't know until after the surgery what I would need as far as additional surgeries or chemo or radiation, any other treatments.
So how are you spiritually processing this? Because you're very young to have cancer, and you're facing this. How are you processing that diagnosis?
I don't know if I really was, to be honest. I was kind of in denial. It wasn't really until I got that mail out, you know, that said, you know, that I had cancer. But in the meantime, my mom was on social media and was contacting everybody that she knew to ask for prayers, and I had a number of relatives who were contacting different people, including I had a great aunt who contacted 100 Huntley Street and asked for me to be put on the prayer chain.
On our prayer, she called her prayer line, so it's good to know we had a little role in praying for you as you went through this.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yeah, it was the weekend before my surgery, I started finding out that there was all these friends, acquaintances, and, you know, even just friends of friends from all around the world that had heard what was going on. They were all praying for me.
Okay, so the morning of your surgery, you wake up and something is different. What happened?
Yeah, it was so bizarre. So that was the first morning I woke up and my stomach was not looking bloated. I was able to stand up straight without any pain. I was able to move around my house without having to take any painkillers. And even like I didn't have like shooting pain down my legs. I was able to lay on my side without feeling that stuff was, you know, moving around my ribs, because it had gotten to the point where if I would lay on my side, it felt like there wasn't enough room inside of me, and I had no shortness of breath for the first time in a number of weeks.
Wow.
So
what did you think was happening at that point?
Yeah, well, I had kind of chalked it up to that weird feeling of when you go to the doctors and suddenly you feel fine, and then it's not until you go home again that all the symptoms hit.
Right.
So I kind of thought, okay, well, that's probably what this is. But at the same time, I was also thinking, like, I did have a lot of people praying for me, and I wonder if I even need this surgery. Yeah.
But you show up for the surgery anyway. The surgery does happen. So now you're in the recovery room. What do they tell you?
Yeah, so that was the part that I was dreading the most, was just that fear, because I wasn't going to know until I came out of surgery what the next steps were going to be. So yeah, as I was in the recovery room and I was coming to, my whole family was around me, and my mom told me that I got a miracle. And she told me that the surgeons opened me up expecting 3 large tumors, and instead all they found was 1 single fibroid, which is completely naturally occurring, is nothing to be alarmed about. And yeah, so there should have, what we had been told and what all the tests showed was, you know, a large tumor on each ovary plus 1 on my uterus. There was nothing on my ovaries. And in fact, I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome a number of years ago, and I had had a number of ultrasounds over the years that all confirmed, the wording was always, yeah, numerous cysts on each ovary. And the surgeons couldn't find any cysts on my ovaries. They couldn't find any scarring, like any damage to my ovaries from all of that. And yeah, and I mean, certainly no tumors. And then just this ordinary fibroid that they were kind of like, well, we're in here anyways, we might as well take that out. But that's really all they had to do.
So tell me about these conversations with doctors, because they don't like the unexpected in a way. And were they admitting that this could be a miracle?
Yeah, they were. Some of them were admitting it very reluctantly. Some were saying, well, I don't believe in miracles, but yes, there is no medical explanation for that. Because that was something that was really important to me, was that I wanted to be able to say that I had a miracle that could be backed up by science, that wouldn't be undone by someone coming and saying, well, actually, you know, this is actually what happened. And so, you know, every nurse that came in the room, every doctor that came in the room, we all told them what had happened. We asked them, is there any scientific or medical explanation for this? And all of them, they would try to come up with an explanation. Like, they would be like, well, maybe you fell. And I'd be like, nope. Didn't fall. Oh, well, you know, maybe it was cramps from your period. Nope, it wasn't that, you know. So like whatever explanations they tried to come up with, I could tell them right away that that's not what it was. So
here's what I love about your story, because you weren't necessarily totally sure about healing. You weren't 100% even really believing for a miracle. So tell me about how this has changed your view of healing and the power of God.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you read about healings in the New Testament, and I had just sort of thought, okay, well, I guess it happened back then, but I didn't know that I really believed that it could happen now. And there was a lot of times where I would hear about someone else being healed, and I would kind of wonder, like, okay, but what actually happened? You know, like if I were
skeptic.
Exactly. If I were to talk to a doctor, what would they say what would they say had happened? So yeah, it really just confirmed for me that, you know, that miracles still do happen today. And I mean, really all I had was just a literal mustard seed of faith, you know, just my mom saying, well, I have people praying for you, and me being like, okay, cool. I mean, yeah, if that works, then great.
So just 30 seconds left. How does this change how you see God?
It's kind of done away with my legalistic view. I used to think that, you know, oh, well, if something miraculous happens, you have to be good enough to earn it. And now it's just fleshed out for me how perfect God is. It has nothing to do with, you know, your imperfections or your perceived perfections. It's really just all about how perfect God is.
Such a good word. Thank you so much for coming today and sharing your story.
Thanks very much.
You know, we get so many calls each and every day, hundreds and hundreds, up 1,200 or more, and hundreds of emails coming in. And a lot of those prayer requests are people that are looking for healing. And please know right now you can call 1-866-273-4444. Email us at prayer@crossroads.ca. My friend Junior Smith is here. He is the digital pastor for Crossroads. Lots of calls coming in. What are some of the things you're hearing in the responses?
We get calls for family issues, addictions, finances, whatever people are going through. They call and they reach out to us. And when they do call, we spend time in prayer to minister to them. And one of the best things we can ever have is to have them either call in or write in and say how impactful it was. I received an email not too long ago from an 18-year-old that was really struggling with her purpose. And she just felt like life was not worth living. In fact, that was a line that she said. I responded and I reaffirmed who she was, not based on society's expectations or even her own, but what God says, the great promise, the great plan that God has for her. And her response, and I also sent her one of our Huntley videos as well, and her response was, all I can say is, wow, thank you for taking the time to answer. And I get that a lot. People are really surprised that we take the time to respond. And she said, I really needed that. And when you are able to send this to somebody and they say, thank you for that, that is life-changing.
An 18-year-old
yes.
feeling of that desperation, but now she's got hope.
No, she has hope, and she wrote back to say, I can now look at things the way God sees it. And I encouraged her to trust God's timing. I said, in fact, the fact that you are now struggling is a good place to be, because now you can go to God for direction.
You need that help. What are some of the other things you're hearing, Junior?
And there's a very interesting phone call that came from the phone lines. This was taken by Pat Bailey, one of our very long-time prayer partners. And these gentlemen went out to smoke weed. They were smoking marijuana when they were interrupted. One of them, in fact, by a voice. And he doesn't understand what's happening. He says, we're going to go home. They take him home, and he feels this sharp pain in his side, and he felt really scared, he explained to Pat. And he was searching for a priest online to talk to. Couldn't find a priest, couldn't find an open church, but then he searched for prayer, and Crossroads came to the top. Pat spoke to him, Pat prayed with him, and he gave his life to the Lord there, and even invited his friend to share, to share in the prayer as well. So those are awesome ways we're reaching and impacting people.
Yeah, and again, we encourage people all the time to call our prayer lines, watching 100 Huntley Street, the other programs that we do. But as you mentioned, people are doing a search, and we're one of the top ones that comes up.
What we do is unique. What we do is nowhere else. People, they have prayer lines, but we have 24/7 prayer. And if you do a search anywhere in the world, Crossroads is going to be at the top. We have been gifted with the opportunity to minister to people in such a way, and it's a very special calling that God has given to this ministry of Crossroads.
Well, you're a very special guy, and we so appreciate you, and we appreciate you as well. We want to continue to keep those prayer lines strong. As you've been hearing, we can't get to every call, so we thank you for what you're doing. And Junior, I thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
I challenge you to find one person in our world that has not been influenced by the power of media. Our children and their future will be deeply shaped by media messages. Christianity must grow its presence through media if we are to be faithful to the call of Christ that we go into all the world to be his witnesses. After 50 years of creating media that has helped millions of people be inspired in God's love, Crossroads has established a legacy vision for the future of media, a legacy that ensures future generations will come to love and follow Jesus. And I want to ask you to be part of building that media legacy. What does legacy mean to you?
I want my children, my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren to know God. And I want people who have never learned about Jesus to hear and respond to the gospel, Lorna. In my life, in over half a century of ministry, there is no question in my mind about the hope that is in God for those who believe. And that's why for David and me, Crossroads Media Mission was always part of our legacy giving, to ensure the next generation knows God's love.
When you leave a gift to Crossroads through an estate plan, charitable gift annuity, or other instrument, you make a lasting impact, ensuring that next generation hears the hope of the gospel and learns how to become followers of Jesus.
Learn how your estate can pay less tax that you can donate as a bequest. Enjoy an above-average guaranteed income for life through a gift annuity and avoid capital gains tax by donating a gift in kind. For a confidential conversation, please call 1-800-265-3100 or email legacy@crossroads.ca.
I'm amazed at the way that God creates in Genesis chapter 1, but also in every person that follows Jesus. The scripture says in 2 Corinthians 5:17 that we are made new creations in Christ. I was thinking about this the other day. I was visiting a friend of mine. She had spent a whole lifetime in really abusive relationships. I'm going to call her Beth. And Beth was having a baby in the hospital. The father of the baby was imprisoned for violence. And when I went to the hospital to check on the birth of the baby, and I brought up some flowers, and I remember getting to the room and there being a guard at the door, a policeman there, and I thought, well, that's weird. And I walked into the room, I realized that the father of the baby had been released from prison for the birth of his child. And I wasn't sure how I felt about it because he had been arrested in violent circumstances. So I was a little bit nervous. I remember entering in the room and my friend Beth was asleep and the crib beside her bed was empty. I remember first just panicking like, wow, where's the baby? And that's when I heard it. I heard this sound. It was a sound of weeping. I remember I went around the corner in the room and I saw this really strong, violent offender, this man, the father of this baby, in his prison jumpsuit, you know, with chains around his ankles, hunched over in the corner with this little newborn baby, his son. And he was weeping, and he looked up at me through his tears, and he said to me, Danielle, have you ever seen anything so beautiful? Have you ever seen anything so beautiful? What is it about babies that's so invoking of sacredness? I have a hunch that babies invoke the sacredness that all of us have at our core. See, I believe that Genesis 1, when God creates humanity, one of the things that he says when he creates male and female together, and he looks at what he's created, this is what the scripture says. This is where God says he saw that it was very good, that there is something beautiful and sacred about every child of God. And sometimes you might not feel it. Sometimes you feel devalued by others. Sometimes you even feel devalued by your critic in your own head. You look in the mirror and you think, ugh, nothing good here. But I'd like you to look again through the eyes of God, because I believe the eyes of God, just like on that first creation account in your life, when he looks at you, he's never seen anyone or anything more beautiful. That at your core being, there's a sacredness, there is a creation, there is a desire, there is a dream. And just like that father, that broken father who could see the beauty in his own son, that's how God sees you. You are sacred. You are human. God speaks over your life. You are very, very good. I hope you hear that.
You know, Greg, when we hear that, when we not just hear it with our ears, but when we hear it in our hearts, it changes the way we treat ourselves, it changes the way we interact with others, and it changes the way that we see others. Like that, you know, even that man that had committed such a violent crime, when she saw his heart for his baby, right? You see people differently.
You do, and I've really tried to, you know, when I see people, especially if they're broken, and it's obvious that they've had, you know, some bad things have happened in their lives, and you just say, you know what, God created them. And we have met so many people in this program that their lives have been transformed because of what Jesus has done. And if you're maybe feeling that, like I am no value, I am no worth, that's not true. God loves you, and he's the one that can make you a new creation. So again, give our prayer lines a call, 1-866-273-4444, and begin a life with Jesus. You won't be perfect, but he'll change you. And that's so exciting. What a great message, Danielle.
That's a good word for us today. I hope you give those prayer lines a call. You never know what can start today that's totally new in your life.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you for your ongoing support of Crossroads, a member of the Canadian Council of Christian Charities. You can write to Crossroads, P.O. Box 5100, Burlington, Ontario, L7R 4M2.
Cheryl Weber's wardrobe provided by Melanie Lynn.
Being a prayer line partner today isn't for the faint of heart. God doesn't call everyone to pray with those in need, but he does urge all Christians to pray for them. This is why, as part of Project Hope Spring, we're looking for 1,000 compassionate believers just like you to promise to pray for our prayer ministry. Become a Crossroads Prayer Promiser today. Visit crossroads.ca/hopespring. In a culture filled with temptation, it's easy to confuse love with lust. The Bible teaches that love is kind, always protects, and never fails. If temptation's knocking at your door, call our 24/7 prayer lines at 1-866-273-4444 or visit crossroads.ca/247prayer. Anytime, anywhere, we're here for you.